Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel for my regular Thursdoid roundup, where I take a look at the recent development update for Project Zomboid, and to save you guys from reading the whole thing, I'll sum up everything you need to know in an easily digestible format. If you find this video useful or informational, please do consider dropping it a like or subscribing to support the channel. I do a whole bunch of other content that you might enjoy. And with that out of the way, let's jump into the Thursdoid from January 26th, 2023. So, the last dev update we were given was a bit more of an all-encompassing overview of what we can expect in Build 42. With this update, the developers give us a more detailed look at a few areas of development instead, starting with the ongoing work with the new fire system. Oh, and if you do want to get that overview of Build 42 stuff, I'll leave a link to the video I did for that dev blog at the end of this video. There's a pretty chunky video that the devs have provided on the new fire features, which covers everything from how the new system calculates where fire should spread to next, based on the materials around it, to the associated heat maps and monitoring of the fire as it spreads in the backend. I'm not going to be able to play the full video as it's just over 5 minutes long, but I will leave a link in the description if you want to go and check the fire system out in a bit more detail. It's really quite impressive how much detail it goes into. One thing that stuck out to me was how this system actually thinks about the level of fuel a given tile can provide for the fire and determines whether it makes sense for the fire to spread to that tile next, and if so, how much is it going to feed the flames. Essentially, this is going to mean that the fire will naturally favor spreading to wooden objects or other high fuel sources and will burn more viciously in those tiles. It's very clever stuff. Towards the end of this video, we get a look at some of the various fire effects and new textures associated with them. This part specifically is being worked on with a VFX artist called Brian, who is working alongside the team at the Indie Stone to make the in-game fire effects more suited to the ISO world of Project Zomboid. Moving on from the fire and flames, the next focus is with the multiplayer team. If you've been reading the blogs thus far or have been watching my videos, you'll know that the current work in this area is focused on moving player inventory interactions away from the client and onto the server itself. The devs state that there's another 3 or 4 weeks set aside for the first stage of this process, and at which point the goal is for the player's inventory loaded from the database on the server and for the server to always have an up-to-date player inventory, hopefully with working progress bars and item moving times that match up with the current way that things work. From there, the second stage of the process begins, which the writer of the blog mentions is the major part of the process. Essentially, this involves having all item manipulation occurring server-side and ensuring that the server no longer trusts clients on this, so that stuff like adding item cheats are rendered entirely dysfunctional. They do say that after this a bunch of testing will be required, but that the more technically minded folk amongst their readers would appreciate the catch up on where the team are with this right now. Alright, so next up is fishing stuff with Ateron. He's been working with testers who have been reporting back on bugs and gameplay in the latest version of his revamped fishing system. Most of the ongoing work is with an improved and experimental control system for a more chilled out and less, and I'm quoting from the blog here, button-holdy tappy experience. He's also been working with the previously mentioned VFX specialist Brian, who has been supplying various splashes, bubbles, and signs of water movement that will indicate the presence of fish and also what kind of size the fish will be under the surface. The devs then go on to say that on top of bug fixes, changed recipes, and improved items for this system, he's also been working up the types of fish the devs will be adding to the game and whether they will be found in rivers, lakes, and they specifically mention that they will not be found in swimming pools, so I guess this is going to be the end for a lot of those perfect base locations due to having a pool in the back garden that we can fish from. Some examples given are that there's going to be a lot of bass, like largemouth, smallmouth, white, spotted, and striped, with other species still to come. Alright, and this brings us to what I would consider the big ticket item for this Thursdoid, and it's one that I'm a huge advocate for. We're finally getting a look at some crafting involving actual crafting stations. This is a work in progress, so the devs do say that this is obviously subject to a lot of change going forward. For example, in the video footage we're shown, the player saws logs at the furnace and makes a hammer in a bit of an odd way, both of which won't work this way once added. The devs go into a bit more depth about what's on show in the footage, and this is where it gets pretty exciting. Various objects can now be entirely created using the game scripting language that it's been made similar to the way items and vehicles are defined. This covers various currently planned objects that can function as a craft station. This means things like the blacksmith's furnace, tailoring bench, fletching, brewing stands, kilns, and so on. Just to clarify, all of these are specifically mentioned in the blog post. Unlike the way the system currently works, these can also be objects consisting of multiple tiles or sprites with various rotations. At a crafting station, the player is able to use their normal recipes, which may provide a bonus for actually doing the recipe at a crafting station, but it's here that they can use blueprints too. Which ones are available to you will be defined by the associated object scripting. Blueprints, which is their current working title for this, will be similar to recipes in that they use inputs and produce outputs. However, they are distinct from your usual recipes in a few ways according to the developers. They then list these out for us. 1. They have different duration modes. In real world seconds, game minutes, or can run passively in the background for long periods. 2. They may not require the player to be present. For example, a melting process may run on the crafting station while you run off to do other stuff around the world. 3. As well as items, they can take the input and produce fluids and different in-game energies like heat, electric, kinetic, or steam. Lastly, when active, a blueprint in progress can store its inputs, outputs, and may have storage capacity for them. For example, a blueprint that needs water as an input may well have an internal storage buffer for water. The devs then say they'll probably show this in a development video next time around, which is also exciting. There's a bit more detail given after this about how these scripts will work and update over time whilst crafts are ongoing, how the UI associated to blueprints can be tailored in appearance to how the devs would like them to be, and how individual functions can be triggered using various calculations like a meat drying rack drying meat based on the temperature and available sunlight. There's a few paragraphs about this in the blog post, so if you want to give that a full read, it's linked in the description as always. So, some very cool stuff in the form of crafting coming to the game. I know I, for one, am super pumped about having actual crafting stations in Project Zomboid. I love that style of gameplay, and I can't wait to see it, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments about this element of the blog post in particular. Let me know what you think about upcoming crafting changes, what you would like to see or not see included. Videos like this are a great way to share your thoughts with the community, so please do. Right, and with that we are on to animals. If the first two videos in this blog post weren't enough for you, we're given yet another in this segment of the blog, showing quite simply that cows now have audio behind them when walking. I'll let a few seconds of that play for you guys now, with the audio included. RJ, who is currently working on all things animals, gave a direct statement for this blog, so I'll read that out for you guys now. He says, "I've been diving more and more into a farm animals designation zones, which are paddocks you outline for your animals to occupy, as long as they don't get loose, and where the game will allow you to do all your various primary animal rearing tasks. For most of this week, I've been refactoring and simplifying my animal behavior and metacode, but there's a few interesting things to mention. Cows and sheep can now recognize a roof area and stay under it during heavy rain. I've been trying to get sheep to move in more of a flock most of the time, and baby animals will follow their mother more correctly. You can now also drop food directly on the ground for them to eat, or in the feeding trough container where it won't spoil quite so quickly." So that's it from RJ's side of things. There's one final note left by the developers at the end of this Thursdoid. That work is also ongoing with things like hair care, first aid, dropping bags, new sounds for the emergency broadcast system, and more. That's it from me in this one. As always, thank you very much for watching the video, and once again, if you have any thoughts on the upcoming changes, share them in the comments. And lastly, before I go, if you've seen some of the teasers I've been sharing regarding our Dark Ages wipe on the Patreon server that's planned to start on February 1st, we've had some great mods developed for this one, including custom-made settlements complete with custom spawn points, craftable clothing and armor with crafting benches associated, and I can't wait to see how patrons flesh out the settlements together. Special thank you to all of my existing patrons for supporting me, the mod development that we commissioned for the server, and for joining us on said whitelisted server for the experience. If you want to join them, there's a link in the description. Just be advised that Patreon will charge on the 1st of each month, so hold off until February 1st if you want to avoid paying twice. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you all in the next one.